Hey Ian, have you ever come to realize that some of the most random factuals in sports can be like the most wild takes to think about?
In what way?
The last time the Panthers have won back-to-back games was during the Steve Wilkes era. That was December of 2022.
Yeah.
Just think about that for a moment.
Yeah. Not surprising. Not surprising to me, honestly.
Well, it's a celebratory time for us. We haven't had this in 2 years. You can't be mad at us at this point. Buzz Pound, thank you for coming today for episode 11. We are thankful for you all continuing to support us as we continue to love doing this. We're a bit seasoned at this now, so we just hope to get better weekly and continue to bring some good content for you. Ian, you ready to go into some Panther news, man?
I'm ready.
Kick it off, buddy.
Touchdown, Carolina! You're listening to the Buzz Pound.
Smith scores, and the Carolina Panthers win in overtime.
A Queen City sports podcast covering your Charlotte Hornets and Carolina Panthers.
Halliburton, nowhere to go! LaMelo's done it! LaMelo's done it! Hornets win! Here comes LaMelo.
Here are your hosts, Ian Blair and Cam Gardner.
Buzz Pound back again with episode 11. Obviously, this past Sunday, big dub in Munich. Panthers taking down the Giants in overtime, 20-17. And back-to-back games won for the first time since, obviously, as Cam mentioned, since 2022. And it's such a good feeling, to be in the win column back-to-back weeks. Obviously, this season, we're going to go into it a little bit, but this season's been such a roller coaster, man. From the first 2 weeks with Bryce and thinking we were dead in the water and Bryce was never going to look good ever in his Panthers career, and Andy Dalton winning the game versus the Raiders, and then now back to Bryce playing, and now he's playing good football. So it's just a roller coaster ride. We've been up and down. I've been going back and forth in my head, whether or not Bryce is our quarterback. And it looks like to me that he's gained his confidence back. Cam, what do you think?
Sitting him down behind Dalton for a bit definitely benefited him. He's smiling, he's confident, just even his overall dynamic on the field is night and day compared to what it was before he got benched and all of last season. Throwing in these rookie quarterbacks in the fire right away, I've never personally agreed with. I mean, of course, you got your rare ones, Cam Newton, and now, you got Jaden Daniels, who's killing it in Washington. Those are rare breeds, but it's definitely paying off for Bryce Young. I'm happy for him. Kind of like you said, it makes you wonder a little bit now. Is he our guy? We got the bye week coming up, and that'll give Canales and them some time to figure out whether to start him or Dalton. Right now, he doesn't have an answer on that. Personally, I'm still with us starting him for the rest of the season, as in Bryce Young, just so we can see what all he can do. These past two games, we're playing against other teams who are pretty much in our same caliber, not good. So, we got to see what he can do against other teams. I know we got the bye week, then we got the Chiefs. That'll honestly, I think they'll win by a landslide, but hopefully we can see something get done again by Bryce Young as he's gained his confidence. He looks comfortable. I love it for him. I know we said that we thought, after that preseason Bills game, but now I can feel a little more comfortable saying he seems to be comfortable. So we'll just have to see how the rest of the season pans out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, I've always been, if you have a quarterback winning games and, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And obviously, Bryce is, won the past two games, two in a row. And he's not, carrying the team on his back. He's just kind of, managing the game. And that's kind of what we needed. Obviously, no turnovers this past game. And the emergence of Chuba Hubbard, obviously, signing the big contract. We'll go into that a little bit. But I've been high on him all year, even when we're losing games. I've been continuing to say throughout the year that Chuba's looked really good. Obviously, this game, 28 carries, 153 yards and a touchdown, average 5.5 yards per carry, and very deserving of the extension we gave him. Obviously, it's a little bit up in the air because we're also paying Miles Sanders. And then we have Jonathan Brooks, who should be back. I was expecting him to be back this past week. And obviously, we're resting him a little bit, obviously coming off that torn ACL his junior year at Texas this past November. But, it's going to be interesting to see what we do with Miles Sanders. I think, Miles Sanders is kind of one of those expendable pieces depending on how Jonathan Brooks plays. I think if Jonathan Brooks comes out, hopefully plays against the Chiefs, gets a couple carries and, plays well, but having a decent amount of money tied into two running backs, I really don't like that, especially when you're trying to build a roster. We still have so many pieces that we need to be successful long term. I don't really like the idea of having a ton of money tied into two running backs. But that being said, Chuba deserved all the money he got, in my opinion. Obviously, playing really well this year, and one of the bright spots for us, even when we were losing games, continue to play well. And really, the offensive line. Once again, the offseason additions. We've talked about it on this podcast before, but Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt, really, we wouldn't be able to run the ball like we have been without those offseason additions. Our offensive line looks really good. We protected Bryce this past game. We only gave up one sack. I'm not sure on the hurries, but that's what we need. And when you have a good offensive line, you're able to run the ball, that opens things up for Bryce and, able to win games ultimately. And he's not doing too much, obviously only 15 for 25 passing, 126 yards, but he looked good. He made some really good throws. He extended some plays. Obviously, Jatavian Sanders on the first touchdown of the game. That was a nice play. Hit Xavier Legette late in the game, obviously on the third down. And Jalen Coker continues to play well. I'm just really pleased with this team. We're not turning the ball over. We're playing complementary football. And when you play teams like the Chiefs, we're going to see how well that works. Obviously, the Giants aren't a very good team, but nonetheless, it's nice to win a game, obviously, and a great to be back-to-back wins in the win column.
Yeah, like I said, since December of 2022, we haven't had back-to-back wins, so I'm taking that in personally. As a Panther
Absolutely.
fan, you have no choice but to, because there's not much else good going on for the organization. But happy for Bryce, had another decent game. I mean, not a great game stat-wise, obviously, but for his sake, it's one of his best games in his career so far. So hope to see him continue to elevate a bit. There'll definitely be some conversations toward the end of the season in regards to him, whether we keep him or not. So that'll definitely be interesting once we get to that point. But Chuba Hubbard, he better have a game like that after signing a 4-year, $33.2 million contract extension. He's been our only real good piece. I mean, a good piece in a bad situation of a team majority of the season. I mean, that says a lot because, sometimes in a bad situation, some players can't make anything out of it. I mean, for his sake, he has, and the team realized we need to hold on to that. So I'm glad they did it. Kind of like you, though, I'm not big on putting money into two running backs, but that'll be a whole another thing later down the line. So that's pretty much all I got to say on that one. But
Yeah.
you ready to get into some Hornets content, man? We got a little bit to go there.
Yeah, we can, for sure, for sure.
All right. Well, we'll start back at last Wednesday, November 6th, the Hornets versus the Pistons at home. It was a win there, 108 to 107. Some standouts there. Miles Bridges, 27 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists. LaMelo Ball, 25 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists. Brandon Miller, 19 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Grant Williams, 12 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists. Always love to see the role players making their way in games. And a fun fact, LaMelo Ball had a solid 15 in that fourth quarter. He has been killing it in the fourth quarter this whole season so far, although we resulted in some losses. He's really making a name for himself this season. I love to see it, but we know how this goes, and I'm knocking on wood as I say this. He has these standout beginning of the seasons, and then he gets hurt. Let's hope those ankles are healthy. Let's hope we don't go back to that because, boy, oh boy, it is just too nice to see right now for us to go back to that. But man, oh man, Brandon Miller, talk about an incredible game winner. And you got to love those moments because Eric Collins has his outbursts that we
Yeah.
as Hornets fans love.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it was awesome to see, obviously, get the win against the Pistons. Brandon Miller's game winner, obviously coming off the rebound and kind of throwing it back up there, with no time on the clock nearly. And Eric Collins, the best commentator in basketball, in my opinion. Obviously, him and Del Curry complement each other perfectly. It's also always so cool to me that obviously he's commentating about his son, obviously with Seth being on the team. I think that's just awesome. But anyway, yeah, obviously great to get the win against the Pistons. And, we need to start stacking these wins. We'll go into the game against the Pacers, which we also won. obviously, but last night in particular against the Sixers, that was a game we should have won, especially, them not having Joel Embiid, and, three wins in a row would have been huge. And obviously we're still really early in the year. We're going to keep saying that probably until February, honestly, when it starts getting crunch time, but there's still a lot of time left. And obviously we're sitting at 4-6. There's, we're right in the hunt. We're right where we need to be. We need to start stacking these wins and, winning these games early in the year. Obviously our players are connecting really well, I think. Trey Mann's been quiet these past couple games, but it's a long season. Obviously, there's going to be stretches where he's cold, and I was hoping personally that there wouldn't be a stretch where he went cold, but I think he's going through a stretch right now where he's a little cold. Gotta get his feet back under him. But obviously, it's nice to win versus the Pistons and then follow that up against the Pacers. Do you want to go into some stats, Cam, versus the Pacers?
Yeah, man. So with the Pacers, LaMelo Ball, another standout game, 31 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. Brandon Miller, 29 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Cody Martin, a good role player for us, 15 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. When he's hot, he's a pretty solid role player, honestly. I know he was hurt for like the past 2 seasons for a long time, but I think he's finally got himself back into the game for a bit. So it's good to see him catching rhythm with the boys again. Now we got a unique one here. Musa Diabate, 0 points, 0 assists, 15 rebounds. Let me repeat that again. 0 points, 0 assists, 15 rebounds.
Yeah.
That was pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean,
And keep in mind, he is a two-way player. If he keeps up games like this, or just, making a name for himself as a solid rebounder for us defensively, they might have to sign him fully to the squad.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, young player, only 22 years old. I wasn't really familiar with him much until, these past couple games early in the year where he's been playing a lot, obviously off the bench, and a great rebounder. He's shown that, and he could score a tiny bit. Obviously, he got a ton of develop. He's only 22 years old, so there's nothing that says he can't develop that as part of his arsenal. But, rebounding, getting 15 rebounds, in your first couple games in the NBA, especially early in the year, that's nice to see. And yeah, he didn't score, but 15 boards, I'll take that any day,
Hey,
honestly.
that's beneficial. I mean, you need rebounds. As somebody who can get that many rebounds in one game, like consistently,
Hmm.
that's pretty impressive. Now, with this game specifically, I think it's official. We can crown the kings of the Queen City in LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. I'm gonna read their stat line again. LaMelo Ball, 31 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. Brandon Miller, 29 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. This is what we've been hoping for.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. It's the dynamic duo. This is what we're hoping. They're complementing each other really well. Obviously, they had the half court lob, I believe it was in the Pistons game where, LaMelo threw a half court lob to Brandon Miller, and it was just like, man, these guys are, they're gelling. They're gelling really well. And that's the kind of thing we need to see in Charlotte. We haven't had that. We weren't able to have that last year because obviously LaMelo got hurt really early in the year, but these guys are really gelling. They're really playing well together. One thing I wanted to point out, where has Josh Green been?
Yeah, no, I agree. Because last night's game was unacceptable. I think it was 2 points.
Yeah, I mean, he's averaging five on the year, and he's in the starting lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see the Josh Green we saw in Dallas. He was definitely scoring a little better there compared to what he's doing right now. Like you say, he's in the starting lineup. I expect some more from him. Those are some disappointing stats we're seeing. Not that he's like a superstar player, but we know he can be a role player, even though he's starting and make his way in there. But he's definitely got to step it up a bit
Yeah. I
because,
mean, that's just, man, imagine if he really stepped it up and could give you, 15 points a game. I mean, this past couple games, especially against the 76ers this past game. I mean, if he scores 10, we win the game. We
yeah,
lost
that could have
by
resulted in a win
Yeah,
easily.
we lost by two, excuse me, in overtime against the 76ers. Obviously, they didn't have Joel Embiid. Paul George is still on the team. They still have good players. And obviously the rookie.
Jared,
Yeah, yeah, Jared McCain had 27. So that's good to, if you're a 76ers fan out there, it's nice to see. Obviously 27 points off the bench. But yeah, it's just disappointing. Not too disappointed. Obviously, you're going to drop games in the NBA. There's a long 82 game season, but it's kind of one that I really wanted to win, especially them not having Joel Embiid.
or Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah, or Tyrese Maxey, which is two most important pieces on their team. You want to see the win there, but it's a long season and, a lot to come.
I will say though, that was another solid battle between two young players in LaMelo Ball and Jared McCain. That was pretty fun to watch. Those two go back and forth when McCain was getting more minutes toward the end of the game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just one you really just want to win, man. Especially when we sent it to overtime.
Let's
LaMelo
talk
hits a
about
huge shot.
let's talk about that shot. That was unreal. The whole sequence. I didn't know what they were going to go for. Talk about imbalance. I mean, he was on his way out of
Yeah,
bounds from the
yeah,
corner and shot that shot, and it was all net.
yeah. It was interesting to me because the end, they went straight from there was like, oh gosh, there was like 10 seconds on the clock or something like that. And they went straight for the inbound, like there was 2 seconds left and he had to chuck up a shot. I mean, we got it to LaMelo, obviously, and he shot it, made it, thank goodness. But there were still like 8 seconds left, 7 seconds left on the clock. I was like, we still had some meat on the bone there for a second. Obviously, lucky they didn't score and we were able to go to overtime. But made me nervous for a second, especially with the inbound play. Obviously, kind of a weird play a little bit to me just because it was such a quick shot. You would have thought there was like 3 seconds left in the game, but LaMelo's being LaMelo and obviously made that improbable shot. I don't, watching the replay, I was like, geez, I don't know how he made that shot, but LaMelo, he's just feeling himself out there right now. That's
He's a
the
rare
best.
breed, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, he's just a great player. And like you said, knock on wood, but hopefully he can maintain this health throughout the year and really because him and Brandon Miller, the sky's the limit for them. And obviously we've had some injuries. Miles Bridges is out for an extended period of time, I believe. What was his injury exactly?
It was some kind of bruise. I know that. I can't remember exactly what area.
Yeah, but I believe he's getting reevaluated in like 2 weeks,
Yeah.
something like that. So hopefully he can, come back and not miss an extended period of time. And hopefully we have Mark Williams back, man. He hadn't played a game in over a year almost, or past a year at this point,
At
and
this
we need
point,
him.
yeah.
Yeah, we need him back.
Especially now that Nick Richards is out for an extended amount of time as well. I mean, having those two centers out is not benefiting us very well. I mean, we're holding it down for the most part, but you got to have your center.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, whenever Taj Gibson is your starting, and I wouldn't even qualify him as a center. He's really just a big four out there being your center. You know, kudos to Charles Lee for able to win games with Taj Gibson out there playing significant minutes. No shade on Taj Gibson, but he's obviously older. He's on the last couple stages of his career. Obviously, was a great player or good player early in his career, but he's not what he used to be. So
It kind of reminds me a little bit of like the final year or two of Andre Iguodala with the Warriors. He didn't play much. He was just kind of that voice because when
yeah,
he was
yeah,
when he was in his prime, he was a great ball player.
yeah,
And Taj Gibson was good back in his day too. But again, he's just at that point where he's that veteran voice and just leader for the team for those young guys. We don't have many older players at all. Everybody's pretty much in their 20s. So you got to have at least one veteran on your team to lead those guys. So
yeah. I mean, obviously, later in the week actually tomorrow we have the Magic in Orlando, and I believe this is the first round of the in-season tournament. But anyway, yeah, they play tomorrow in Orlando, and hoping for a win.
I mean,
Hoping.
they're without Paulo for a while, so kind of another situation like we were against 76ers. They're without their star player, so those could be winnable games. They just got to be able to close out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then obviously on Saturday we have the Bucks who are 2-8, which is very surprising this point in the year. So
That's a whole nother conversation. Those
yeah,
guys, there's no reason for a team with Giannis and Damian Lillard, who are both playing very well and still losing. It doesn't make any sense to me. But again,
yeah,
that's a whole other conversation. So,
yeah, honestly.
well, I think it's time for some Carolina college hoops.
Let's get into it.
All right. Well, let's start off with UNC. They played Kansas this past Friday, November 8th. It was a loss. For me, that was a little touchy there, but they caught up a little bit there because it was a pretty good little blowout early in that first quarter, but it ended in a 92-89 loss. So I'm not upset with that. Hopefully they can rebound a little bit and hopefully win the next game. They play on Friday, November 15th against American University. Hopefully they could get a dub there. Now, the Duke Blue Devils, they played Army West Point Friday, November 8th. They won 100-58. Talk about a blowout. Up next, which is their game tomorrow against Kentucky, Tuesday, November 12th. That should be a pretty fun game there to, once again, blue blood teams going against each other. That should be a pretty fun game there. Two exciting teams. I like seeing good basketball, so that should be a fun one there. And last but not least, the Wolfpack, NC State. They played Presbyterian Friday, November 8th. They won 81-72. And up next, they got Coastal Carolina Wednesday, November 13th. You got some interesting games coming up. I'm really looking forward to that Duke game, honestly. That should be a pretty fun game to see.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you mentioned UNC losing to Kansas, and UNC went down big in the first half. I really think that's what ultimately killed them. They had a really good second half, but it's kind of too little, too late, and went on a big run. Almost came back and won the game. I wasn't able to watch the game, but kind of just looking at the box score, looking at some highlights, it seemed like a really good game. Obviously, two at least final, Sweet 16 teams, more than likely Elite Eight type teams going at it. And, you love to see games like that. Obviously, Duke and Cooper Flag, he's all over social media. If you don't have X or Instagram, Sports Center and ESPN's going to post just about everything. He can make a pass or he could sit on the bench some type of way and they post about it. That's neither here nor there. It's kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of Zion. Obviously, when Zion was at Duke, any kind of play he made was going on social media because they're so hyped. And obviously, Cooper Flag's a great player. He's going to be a great player, but it's just a little bit too much for me, honestly. Just every single highlight on ESPN when Duke plays is Cooper Flag doing something. But anyway, obviously Duke's a really good team playing Kentucky here tomorrow, I believe. It'll be a great game. And then NC State, obviously. And I want to mention the state of Alabama has some really good basketball. Obviously, Samford, UAB, they dropped the first game, but followed that up with 2 wins. And then Auburn beating Houston in Houston. It wasn't on campus at Houston, but Auburn looks really good. Obviously, had the off the court situation on the plane. We're not going to get into that on this podcast, but Alabama looks good too. Obviously, the number 2 team in the country. Auburn's number 5 right now. Sanford's winning. UAB's winning, and hoping for another year where all 4 teams can make it in the NCAA tournament. Was huge for the state of Alabama last year. Was huge for Birmingham to have both Sanford and UAB in the tournament. But anyway, we are a Carolina podcast. I just want to kind of give a quick shout out to the state of Alabama and Birmingham specifically. Obviously, Samford and UAB being great teams in the city.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, since we are here, I mean, that's who we support since we're locals. But you with UAB working over there and me being an alum, it's just right there. But I'm definitely rooting for both teams. Hopefully, they represent Birmingham well this upcoming season.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully, hoping for another NCAA tournament. It was crazy to me that 2 teams from Birmingham made it to the NCAA tournament, obviously, with all those teams out there, 64 teams, and we were represented well by the state of Alabama. Obviously, we all pretty much lost early on in the tournament besides Alabama, but it was still nice to see. The state of Alabama do well in basketball. We're obviously known as a football primary state, but, don't sleep on us in basketball either.
And I still got a bone to pick with Bama basketball because they knocked my Tar Heels out a little earlier than I expected in the tournament last year. But neither here or there. I just like seeing good basketball. I mean, you can't go wrong with March Madness. I mean, the tournament overall is just one of the best things ever in sports.
Yeah, it really is. If you're listening to this podcast and are not a big fan of college basketball, you got to at least watch the NCAA tournament. There's nothing like it where these little teams, these small schools, some of them don't even have a football program. Obviously, like schools like Wichita State don't have a football program, Gonzaga, and these teams from small towns in the middle of nowhere making a run and, beating these North Carolinas and these, Virginias and Dukes and teams like that. It's just crazy. Obviously, Kentucky going down these past couple of years in the NCAA tournament against smaller schools. It's just really, it's crazy and it's awesome. It's one of the things I love about sports, and I know you do as well. So
yeah, I mean, you gotta love it, man. There's nothing better than sports in this world to me.
Yeah, for sure. Cam, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, man. Well, BuzzPound, thank you guys for tuning in today for episode 11. Keep on supporting. You can follow us on Twitter, aka X now, at BuzzPound Pod, and you can find us on Instagram as well.
And as always, we appreciate y'all joining us for another episode 11 at this point. Soon we'll have a Q&A type episode as we grow this community and kind of as y'all continue to listen to our podcast and kind of have some questions. Obviously, we'll have a listener Q&A podcast hopefully coming up soon in some point, and some other things, as Cam mentioned last episode. We're always trying to find ways to improve and obviously grow this podcast. But as always, we appreciate every single one of you who continue to follow us on our social medias and listen to our podcast on both Spotify and YouTube. But we'll see y'all next week.
Until next time, we're the Buzz Pound. Keep pounding and keep the Hive mentality.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Buzz Pound. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and let us know what you thought of this episode. Until next time, this is the Buzz Pound.
Touchdown!